Jason, I think it's been a little while since we had a good CPS episode.
You know, if you would have said to me back when we first started the podcast, we're going to have this whole series of CPS videos, I'd be like, what?
Right.
But here we are.
So a CPS, just for background, is Certificate Practices Statement, and it is where the CA publishes the expectations for how it's going to operate as a CA. And in the world of the Web PKI, that allows relying parties and subscribers and security researchers and others to understand to a certain degree of detail, what does the CA do? So you can make yourself confident that what the CA is doing is proper and what it should do. And in an internal PKI perspective, it allows internal stakeholders to do something similar, to say, well, we're depending on this PKI. Let's understand what it should do and make sure that it's correct. In an internal PKI perspective, it also serves as almost a run book or a guideline, right? Whereas you're working on it, you can go back to the CPS and say, is what I'm doing matching what we've decided we're going to do, right? So that's what a CPS is. CPS is change, right? You make changes to your PKI, you make changes to how it's working, and that means you need to update the CPS. And so based on that, I'm going to make the following statement. A CPS of necessity is always a superset of actual practices.
A superset.
Correct. So let's walk this through. If there is any certificate issued that does not match the CPS, by virtue of the fact that it does not match the CPS, it is misissued. In the case of a public certificate, it must be revoked. In the case of your private PKI, there are consequences because you're not doing, whether or not you choose to revoke it, you're not doing the thing that is expected, right? So there might be a security flaw, or there might be a interoperability flaw, or there are consequences. So there's two scenarios in which the CPS must be a superset. One is the one we just talked about, which is the world of changing practices. So thought experiment with me. I am going to add a new method of, I've been talking a lot about DCV of late. Let's say DCV.
Yeah.
That I didn't have before. New DCV method is approved. It's within the rules. I can do it. I want to do it. Well, if I start using that method of DCV and it's not in my CPS, it's misissued. Even if it is allowed by the baseline requirements, right, it is still misissued. Even if I'm audited against it, it is still misissued because I didn't tell the public this is a thing I might do. I also can't have a CPS and an issuance practice occur at the exact same millisecond. So what do real CAs do in the real world if they don't want to have an issuance problem? And this is the real thing they really do. They publish the CA, or they publish the CPS, and then the next day they turn on the new DCV method.
Right.
So there is a period of time where anytime a change occurs, the CPS must reflect a practice that is not actually yet a practice.
Right. There's a temporal aspect to a CPS.
Same comes for deprecation of something. You say, we're going to stop doing the following thing. Well, you better not change the CPS until you actually stop, or it's misissuance. And so the same practice works the other way around. We stop the process, we shut it down. Hopefully remove the code, but either way, we shut it down. And then at a time after that, it could be as little as 1 day, but at a time after that, we publish a new CPS that removes that practice, right? If you're going to update a practice, I'm going to stop doing it way A, and instead I'm going to modify it and do it way B. You have to publish a CPS that accounts for both, make the change, publish a new CPS that only accounts for the new one.
Yep.
So these are all examples of the CPS being a superset of what you actually do in the real world. Like if I sat and I monitored 100% of certificates for some period of time, there would be something in the CPS that none of those certificates do. By definition, by design. And here's my point. That's actually the right way to do it. It's by good design. Right?
Makes sense.
So that's situation number one. Situation number two is that there are lots of things in any PKI where you may approach something multiple ways. Again, let's go back to DCV. There are a lot of methods of DCV. There's like a dozen or more methods of DCV that are allowed today. That number's going to go down, but but then new ones will be added, right? There's a lot of ways you can do CCV. A CA might allow itself all of those methods. We more or less do, right? There's lots of ways you could do DCV. You could do file-based, you could do, DNS-based, you could do Acme-based. It would be ridiculous to require all of those every time you issue a cert. But you want to allow all of those as possibilities. So that means when you read the CPS, we say, well, we might do file-based DCV, or we might do Acme-based DCV, or we might do DNS-based DCV. That means by its nature, every time we issue a public TLS certificate, public server certificate, most of the potential methods of DCV are not used. The vast majority of things we say we might do for DCV, we don't do. And again, that is by design. There also may be very rare things. In certain very rare circumstances, we might do the following thing. If those circumstances are rare enough, material periods of time might go by where it's not done at all. Hey, I looked at a week's worth of issuance and I saw 0 examples of this instance of things you said you might do. Right? It's there. It's available. We didn't do it. There's nothing wrong with that. That is by design, and it is by correct design. Right? Now, this is important because I think there is oftentimes a misapprehension among people who don't think about this very deeply, who say, oh, well, no, your CPS, like what I read in the CPS needs to exactly match what I see in the world. And oh, there's a mismatch. It's a problem. No, it's a problem if there are things that you're doing that according to your CPS, you may not do. That's a problem. But what the CPS does is CPS captures the range of things you might do, not the range of things you are doing in any individual instance, right? When I'm driving the car, my foot might be on the gas and it might be on the brake. My foot will not be hanging out the window. So what's allowed? On the gas, on the brake. What's not allowed? Hanging out the window. If it's ever hanging out the window, that's a problem. However, there are plenty of times when it's not on the gas. It's not a problem. There's plenty of times when it's not on the brake. Also not a problem. Right? That's how to think about it. That's my CPS for driving the car. What am I going to do with my right foot? And that's what a CPS is for, is to define the range of things that the CA could do so that an outsider can look at it and say, okay, I'm okay with every one of those. If any one of those occurs, I'm okay with it. Similar for your internal PKI CPS, so that an internal stakeholder or agent, someone who's working on this, can look and say, okay, these are the sets of things that I can do. And I won't go out of that. But again, I don't have an obligation to do all of those things at any given time, or in fact, ever. Right? And again, I see people get confused about this a lot.
I can see how there can be mass confusion.
Yeah. They're expecting a one-to-one correspondence. Yeah. And you can see why that would happen.
Yeah.
Right? But no, that's not what the CPS-4 is. The CPS-4 is to define a range of activities, not to tell you that you can take every one of these activities to the bank every time.
Right on,
Make
Tim.
sense?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Tim.